Welcome to Anime for Schmucks, the podcast where we expose well-meaning idiots to bizarre anime, whether they want to watch it or not. In order of least attractive to most, I'm Dan.
I will go next. I am Zach.
And I'm Hewitt, the de facto most attractive podcaster, idiot, schmuck.
Fell into my trap. Perfectly. Well, okay, so the premise of this podcast is we show people who have some or next to no interest or exposure to anime, weird anime, and we extract their takes from them forcefully. Zach, you're pretty familiar with a lot of anime, right?
Some Hayao Miyazaki and a few others here and there, but not that much.
Not like the deep dive stuff.
No.
Yeah. Hewitt, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your general knowledge of anime?
I would say I'm a solid 10 expert. I know them all. I know Kawasaki, Suzuki,
Hewitt.
Sedzuki,
Hewitt.
and I have seen one anime ever, and it was weird times.
To quote Hewitt himself, he has called himself, on a scale of 1 to 10, he is, when are we going to stop talking about anime?
Yeah.
So,
I'm always down for a good conversation, but you guys may have to carry this.
We'll see. Well, the audience at home already knows what we're watching because they can read. But you guys have no idea what we're about to watch.
Tabula Rosa.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw you a little bone, see if you can recognize it. And if the audience at home doesn't know what you're listening to, you're about to. So what do you guys think?
It sounds like watching it and talking about it will be kick-ass.
Zach?
this reminds me of this game for Nintendo 64 called The Mystical Ninja. And, but that game was trying to be funny.
Well, you guys aren't far off. The anime we're watching today is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, The Phantom Blood.
It's quite a title.
It certainly is. So, you guys ready to tuck in?
Ready.
Yes, ready.
Then let's do it. So, we just wrapped up watching 3 episodes of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, The Phantom Blood. I'll admit, I'm a big fan of this series. I enjoyed it for a couple of years. Zach, what did you think?
It lives up to the name. It is a bizarre adventure. There are phantoms. There is blood. There is a guy named JoJo. I will try to figure out how to articulate the experience as we do this. Caught a lot of, I think, references to various things. And wow, what an experience. I can't say I've seen something quite like it, even though I saw it was made of parts of things that I have seen before, if that makes sense. Anyway.
That's a fair assessment. It's definitely taking a lot of cues from other things, both as a manga and anime, and just from culture as a whole. Hewitt, I noticed that when we were watching it, Zach and I were doing a lot of talking and, having a good old time, but you were processing.
Yeah, I was definitely taking it all in like bamboo shoots under the fingernails. And I have so many thoughts about it, but really it's all about like, how much I already knew about anime, or as I like to call it to get under Dan's skin, Japanime.
You succeeded.
He does. He instinctively reaches for the bridge of his nose every time I say it. Like it's exasperated. Like,
And it's hard to make Dan do that. He's a
no.
guy.
I can do that all day.
He knows where all my soft spots are. So I'm taking that you didn't enjoy JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Well, I didn't enjoy it for what it was. I didn't enjoy it, but I enjoyed thinking about it and wondering, what kind of individuals' needs might be met by this particular production. Like, there's a lot of things that I think are super interesting about it. It's just did not entertain me and made me profoundly miserable.
Could you take us through the premise of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? Just give us an idea of the plot if someone out there isn't familiar with it.
Sure. So as you pointed out when we were watching it, it owes a debt to Wuthering Heights. This wealthy family takes in this guy who looks like, some sort of anime character. And for one of the things that I didn't understand was that his father's like, so this guy's dad died. What's his name? Dio? Dio's dad died after having rocked for a long time. And so Dio's dad died, and like his dying words to his son were, become very successful or rich or something. And Dio's response to this was like, to be like, oh, I'll show you rich. Like almost in a resentful way. as though I thought maybe that's a cultural thing, like someone's dying wish is sacred, and he's thinking to himself, great, now I have to be a success. Because that guy said it right before he kicked the bucket. And so this family takes him in, and he immediately starts trying to make life hell for the son of this rich man who's taken him in, which is JoJo, who, as from where I'm sitting, is our hero. But from what I'm understanding about the fucked up world of anime, it's like if people watched The Karate Kid and came away from it going, I really love those Cobra Kai guys. they were stylish, and they were hell bent on mischief. And just that's like, I get being into Darth Vader or whatever, but anyway, so that's Dio and JoJo. I don't know if you want to continue from there.
Okay, well, Dio is probably one of the series' most popular characters and one of the most sort of enduring villains in anime.
He's also one of the series' 2 characters.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
That is another thing. The first season is pretty tight up until where we stopped. It gets even weirder after that, because the next episode, JoJo is recovering from his injuries, where he meets a guy who teaches him a special kind of sunshine kung fu.
What is sunshine kung fu?
I'll tell you, Zach.
Please do.
It's sunshine kung fu that lets you kill vampires with a single chop.
I see.
And dance on water and shoot light out of your fingers.
Rock on.
Yeah.
Standard anime fare.
Yeah. And this becomes like the second and third act of Phantom Blood. It's JoJo learning the special sunshine kung fu, and then finally taking out Dio once and for all.
Whoa.
Okay.
So that actually happens.
It actually happens. Actually, there's a twist ending at the end of Phantom Blood, which I'm going to go ahead and spoil now. If you don't want to know how the Phantom Blood ends, you want to watch it, stop here. If not, okay. Here's what happens.
He's not talking about the podcast. If you want to watch the Phantom Blood, stop here.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So JoJo and Dio have a climactic battle in a castle. JoJo sets his hands on fire to counteract Dio's powers and then beats him up until his body explodes, leaving only his head. Then they think that Dio is dead, so he gets married to the girl in the beginning. They're on a honeymoon on a boat, only to be ambushed by Dio's severed head in a jar.
Wow. So the girl at the beginning does come back eventually.
Yes, she does. I like JoJo, but it does not really do a lot with female characters.
Definitely something I noticed. That female character, that lone female character, she was there and then she was gone, and it felt like a setup with no payoff.
Yeah.
But the fact that she comes back in some way, I'm glad.
Yeah, even if it's just essentially JoJo's baby mama.
Apparently, yeah. As for my own experience with the show, it was so, and like, it really is like the show succeeded, because the word that just comes to mind is bizarre. It reminded me of a lot of things. It reminded me of if Dragon Ball Z or a fighting game were set in a Merchant Ivory production. Definitely Wuthering Heights inspiration. When all of a sudden it became a vampire story, I then got a lot of the whole, like, Anne Rice Interview with the Vampire, of, like, good-looking vampires.
The elegant quality of it.
Yes, like, and there's this elegance to it. Definitely, just like, there's, for those who've played Resident Evil 7, the cop who gets, like, the shovel through the upper half of his face, that, if you're into that happens a lot in this show, with various,
it's extremely
forms
bloody.
of attacking. Yes.
It is a very bloody show.
Just imagine all the Phantom Blood that they didn't show, in addition to the actual non-Phantom Blood that was coloring every scene.
I laugh cried at one point in episode 3 where Dio puts on this mask, and it, like, latches into the back of his head with these kind of spikies, and he becomes a vampire in his laughing maniacal laugh, and then just everyone unloads bullets into him, and he is seemingly dead for a long time.
But if you're thinking about that from the outside, there's a guy being attacked by a mask, and the cops, nobody helps him. They just shoot him. It's like they know what the audience already knows.
Right, exactly. It was that felt very Bad Movie Night. That was really fun.
In their defense, they did then marvel at the fact that he wasn't dead.
Because those cops did everything right.
But the last thing it reminded me of, if not directly, there's a very beloved show now. Well, it was discontinued with they made a sort of, I think it was like a 2-hour or 2.5-hour film they did as a finale, series finale on Netflix. The show is Sense8, and it's not directly like Sense8 other than, the just like over the top fighting and lots of like squid blood blasting everywhere. But it reminded me of it in that Sense8, and it's a beloved show, so I might get some backlash for this, but it's even though there's beauty in it, sometimes it feels like there was a show written called Sense8, and then someone took that and wrote this crazy fan fiction, and then the fan fiction is what got filmed and put on television. And I kind of felt that way watching this show, of like, it felt like just this bizarre, here's all these characters you can ship, and that there's like sexual tension between, and then just like fighting, and it was just like so over the top.
A lot of the Wachowski stuff has that kind of feeling, that kind of energy, where it feels, it's good that where you feel they're so passionate about it. But
Absolutely, yeah.
And JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Phantom Blood, is like definitely, it's one of his first major series, and he just kind of keeps tightening up his craft as he goes along with each chapter. So there is a certain disorganization with Phantom Blood.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I had the thought in reflecting on the show that, as I think we've established, I did not enjoy this experience.
I somehow picked that up.
And what it reminded me of is the blues, that, there's a tremendous amount of talent and passion and intensity brought to bear on it, but it doesn't meet my needs in any way, shape, or form. So talking about the dude, clearly caring about it, but also it having this kind of seeming like maybe a fan mentality took it over, makes sense. But I mentioned to you guys at the time, and we touched on in the intro that I am not an expert on these things, and nothing about the show surprised me. Like, actually, one thing surprised me. So it's fair to mention that, but I've heard people for years talk about, there's these crazy animes and all this crazy stuff happens. And so when we watched this, and it was the first 3 episodes of anime that I've ever consciously sat down and watched, and crazy things happened, I just thought, yeah, that's what I've been hearing for 20 years. That crazy things happen in anime. And, so when after 1.5 episodes, it turned out this whole thing was going to be about vampires, that didn't faze me. I actually thought they showed great restraint in taking a whole 1.5 episodes before getting there.
But the best thing about JoJo is down the road, it's turned gears from vampires so quickly into something else completely out of left field.
Does the mask get destroyed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. But that happens in close to the end of season 1 and season 2.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah.
Based on what we saw in the 3 episodes. Like, if you haven't watched it, I'm sorry to spoil it for you, but this mask is the source of a lot of trouble.
Maybe there were some things I was going to say, but maybe let's talk about this mask a bit.
Okay, all right. The big MacGuffin in Phantom Blood is a mysterious stone mask, which the Joestar family, i.e., JoJo's family, has been studying. It looks hilarious when JoJo is studying the mask, because he's an archaeologist, because he's a total beef monster. It looks like he would just crush every fossil with his huge,
yes, it does.
meat sandwich hands.
What the Enchantress does to that statue in Suicide Squad. Very non-archaeologist-like move of just, what's this? Oh.
At some point, I think they knew they couldn't sell him as an actual archaeologist, so they kept it to the one thing was like the magnifying glass on the desk. Aha!
I reject the notion that anything was too audacious for the creators of JoJo. They were like, one of my favorite outlandish things that happened was that after JoJo and Dio won their big college football game, or was it rugby? Or
I think it was rugby.
Yeah. It was whatever Japanese people think we do in America.
Or England.
In England, yes,
Yeah.
England. that afterwards, so people said like things that I associate with kind of typical semi-decipherable Japanese dialogue, like they're the heroes of our school. You know, like, things that you can't like actually imagine an actual person saying. But then the school paper seemed intent on getting an interview, a big scoop about the game that had just been won. And so between that and the mask that turns you into a vampire, I just feel like to say, no, we can't possibly sell this, Mr. Universe-esque physique as an archaeologist. That requires a level of like humility or adherence to some normal, norms. Normal norms, new band name I called it, that they don't have. You're projecting. You're projecting your own decency and presence of restraint onto the people who gave life to JoJo.
Oh my God. Speaking of, just some things being so weirdly on the nose to like a comic effect, to really show like we're in England, wasn't the name of their school like Hugh Hudson High School? Which was really funny. And something else. Oh, before I forget, to go back to the mask, it looked like there was a definite Halloween reference at the one point.
Yeah, I could see that.
I think it was, I have to admit, I think it was Dio who encounters like two like kind of muggers or something. Ruffians, yes. And like one of them, I think, gets the mask on him. And then it was like, I don't remember if it was like over Dio's shoulder, but the composition of the scene, it looked like Michael Myers, doing like the iconic sitting up.
Yeah, like the shape coming at you.
Right, the shape. Yeah, exactly. And do you know, like, do the people who make this, do they say like, we're inspired by just like all these different threads and we just kind of
it's a
weave them all
melting
together?
pot. Everything they see, references. The music stuff gets especially out of control later on as
Gotcha.
they just start naming characters. There's two guys in the show named Dyer and Straits.
Yeah, one thing we didn't touch on was that Dio is not the only character with a musical name. There's also Robert E.O. Speedwagon.
who is my favorite character in the entire series.
Yeah, you mentioned when he came on the screen, and then for the next episode and a half, there was nothing to bear that out. Apparently, Robert E.O. really comes into his own sometime later.
He's the Jimmy Olsen of JoJo.
And sorry.
The guy who just like compliments JoJo and how great he is all the time.
Gotcha. And what was JoJo's father's name?
I never actually caught it.
Gotcha.
But the tradition in the show is for characters to have like a Joe in their name somewhere.
I see.
Yeah. You're going back to the Stone Mask. The origins of that actually come out in the next series.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Which is also very strange as well.
Well, I gotta say, I don't know if I have the, like the time or energy or investment to keep watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But I have to say, to the show's credit, it got me interested in at least, like, kind of looking up the lore, the mythology, like, what exactly happens? Because it was just so off the wall, and, like, you're talking about, like, sunshine kung fu and stuff.
That comes in, yeah. It's pretty crazy. And you know what? Yeah. They just throw it out and go to something even weirder down the road.
That reminds me, because none of this actually sounds crazy to me. It sounds lazy.
Lazy.
It sounds like, let's just have this happen. and what it actually reminded me of is something called NaNoWriMo. Now, the three of us all have history in the world of literary retail, and And so we're all very familiar with NaNoWriMo as it's not really an acronym. It's like a shortening of National Novel Writing Month. And apparently the guideline for this, because you're trying to write a novel in 1 month, people write as much as they can every day, and they're trying to write a certain number of words per day, and they obnoxiously post their word counts on social media. Like if we're not going to read your book, what chance do you think you have of us reading the post that tells how far along you are in writing the book? but one of the guidelines is that if you write yourself into a corner, just write yourself out. Like, don't story yourself out. Like just Deus ex machina yourself out. Like, swoop in, get yourself out of the corner you've written yourself into, and move on with the story. Otherwise, you're never going to finish a novel in 1 month.
Yeah.
And so this show felt like that to me. It didn't feel inspired. It just felt like something had to happen. It's got to keep going. It's like the Winchester Mystery House. Do you guys know what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, this house out in California was built by the widow of the rifle magnate who invented Winchester rifles. And she believed that her house was haunted by evil spirits and that if she stopped building, that she would die. And apparently these spirits were telling her that if you stop building. So the house has doors that open onto a sealed wall and staircases that just lead up to the ceiling because there's no floor above. There was going to be at some point, and then at some point she actually died. And that's what this show feels like to me. It's just like, and now behind here we have another addition on this crazy house, But it doesn't feel, creative or anything. It just feels like we had to keep feeding the fire. And that's what I was going to say too about the Zach asking about the references and stuff, is that they're probably, they probably have like 40-ish minutes to make a 20-minute show. And so they just dump literally everything that they can take from any corner of their own memories into it. And,
like even there was were you gonna say
no,
something
go
else?
ahead.
Like another moment where I laughed so hard I was cry laughing was Jojo meets this girl, and they're like more or less together. Sparks fly. And Dio is like, how can I F this up too? And so he grabs the girl, gives her first kiss, is extremely maniacal and awful about this. She grabs mud off the ground and is wiping his kiss from her mouth. And then when Jojo finds out about this, they have, I realize that it sounds like I'm just constantly name dropping, but in a way that's kind of what the show kind of was just like a bunch. It felt like just like all these kind of Frankenstein monsters like cobbled together. If you've seen Raising Arizona or one of the Evil Dead movies where it's like the camera is the perspective of, in the former's case, a motorcycle, and in the latter's case, a demon, and it's just like sort of hurtling forward, and it's like jumping over things effortlessly to get to its target. And we literally get the perspective of Jojo just running towards his home and like jumping over like tall fountains and bushes and things.
Doing a Hulk run.
Yeah, doing a Hulk run. And it's so over the top that you're like, are we supposed to be kind of laughing, or are we supposed to be taking this really seriously? And I was just like having fun, laughing, and like it was so over the top. And one other thing that it to go to what you were saying about the NaNoWriMo is my wife recently played through Final Fantasy VII, JRPG game, and there's a moment where your character in like a secret spot, it's like a hidden area in the game or something like this, you can open up a safe And as soon as you open up the safe, you all of a sudden are in this boss battle. And we just cracked up laughing as soon as we saw the boss, because it looked like a 7-year-old boy was given 4 crayons and told, draw the scariest monster you can think of. And the 7-year-old kid, without much life experience, drew like a half fire, half blizzard monster. And it was just so like unintentionally adorable. And in a way that like the show, it almost felt like a kid, like, I don't know, like if kids on the playground just like came up with this weird, just like
Like
oh,
it had
man,
that
like,
kind of like energy, a lot of creative force behind it.
definitely, yeah. So I gotta say, I don't know. I can't say if I thought it was lazy or just like this big, like creative chaos going on. I can see how the one case can be made. I can see how the other case can be made.
Because I think we have the
don't know.
two camps right here.
Yeah, I feel like Hewitt is one half of the spectrum.
Is anti-JoJo.
One side, yeah.
And I'm the JoJo stan.
Right.
I'm pro JoJo. I'm anti Dio. That guy's an asshole.
Yes, he is. Oh my god. But yeah, I think I fall somewhere in between. I was enjoying it. I was having a lot of fun, but I don't know if it's sort of like when you see like a Nicolas Cage movie and you're like, is he a genius or madman?
It is the most Nicolas Cage anime
Yeah.
ever made. In terms of it's either on or weird.
Didn't we say Grave of the Fireflies is the most Leaving Las Vegas
Yeah,
anime?
yeah.
Because it's just so depressing
die
and beautiful
afterwards.
and
Yeah.
and yet, yeah. Huh.
Maybe that's a subject for a future podcast. Is which
Which Nicolas
what's the overlap metaphorically between Nicolas Cage's career and all extant anime?
And the entire latter half of his career is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Possibly. I don't know.
Possibly. All right. So
To be fair, I haven't seen all of his new stuff. So.
okay. Well, taking the JoJo stan position, you guys watched 3 episodes, and I'm going to say that you probably watched the most normal segment of the show.
Wow. I'm not surprised because it was just getting weirder and weirder.
Yeah. But you dipped your toe and you got a good taste of it. I think that's enough for people to make a decision on whether they want to commit.
Yeah, I would go ahead and watch the rest of the series, but I have unrealized dreams, and I just don't think this is a show for people who have unrealized dreams. In fact, in reflecting on who the show is for, I thought to myself, like, either lottery winners or people who were born so wealthy that they never have to work, and they literally like have filled all their days with like they've seen every episode of Cheers and Seinfeld and MASH, and then one day as they're thumbing through Hulu, they go, oh, the only show I haven't watched, JoJo's Phantom Blood show, and then they get sucked in and they go, I wish that series didn't have to end because now I have nothing.
I would say that I give the show. I have to say, ultimately, I recommend the show. At least to just sort of give it a shot, and because it was just so weird and over the top, and I could see someone who just, loves like the kind of over the top, crazy bizarreness, just really enjoying it. Again, there were times where I was just laughing so hard I was crying. And even though I know this makes my recommendation a bit mixed, I don't think I'm going to continue with the show because, like as Hewitt has put it before, there's some art that meets your needs and there's some that does not. I don't think the show meets my needs. But I will say that I like if I was hanging out with Dan and his brother Barry, and they were like, do you want to watch an episode? It would be a lot of fun. And also, how do I put this? Anything that has that kind of just super avid fan base, like be it Sense8, Twin Peaks, Stranger Things.
Oh yeah, that's JoJo to a T.
Exactly. And when you've created something that has that passionate a fan base, I haven't looked this up, but I do not doubt that this show has like a lot of like people who might cosplay the characters or things, because like they really lend themselves to that.
Oh yeah.
And then also I gotta say, I love a story that has like weird rules to it. Like for instance, in Stephen King's It, I love the whole like every 27 years this happens, and the only way you can defeat it is in these methods and like ritual of Chud, and like I've always loved that kind of stuff. Or like Gremlins, like there's like weird rules to things. And JoJo has a lot to its mythology going on, and even if I might not continue the show, I have to admit I might look up on Wikipedia or something, something about Sunshine Kung Fu, because that kind of stuff is sort of fun.
What you're saying actually reminds me of something I said after I watched, a film called Synecdoche, New York, written and directed by Charlie Kaufman and starring the late great, my favorite actor of all time, Philip Seymour Hoffman. And it's so weird. And after it was over, I said, I think only 1% of people will enjoy that. But I think everyone should have to watch it so that 1% can know who they are. And while I wouldn't say that about JoJo, if someone else did, I wouldn't begrudge them.
Sure. Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
All right. So to wrap things up, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure: The Phantom Blood. We have from Zach a
mild recommendation. Everyone see it to find that 1% who loves it.
For me, it's a check it out. Watch as much of it as you can. Become obsessed with huge burly men in fantastic clothes. And Hewitt?
I say, if you have listened to this podcast, you pretty much owe it to yourself at this point to at least watch the first 3 episodes and see what all of the gracious contention was all about.
And to be fair, it's pretty obvious more than just 1% of people out there love it.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's a very awesome fan base. So
It's found its fans. They are rabid.
And that's great. That truly is. When someone has created something that does that, that's no small order, I think.
All you need, really. Oh, well, that's going to be it for us. Feel free to shoot us an email. We're going to have it in the comments right there if you have any recommendations for stuff you'd like us to check out. Until next time, this is Dan.
This is Zach.
This is Hewitt.
Signing off.